We praise people who give everything to a cause, who sacrifice their time, their relationships, their well-being, in the name of something bigger. But what happens when that sacrifice becomes too much? When purpose stops empowering you and starts breaking you down? When activism becomes your entire personality until you lose yourself completely? Good Trouble gives us one of the most honest portrayals of activism burnout through Malika, because she doesn't just lose her energy, she loses herself, her direction, her joy, and her ability to connect with others. The psychology of burnout in purpose-driven lives is rough, and being good shouldn't come at the cost of yourself. Malika starts out passionate, focused, driven. She is someone who leads with heart and empathy. She sees injustice and feels responsible for fixing it. But slowly we watch something shift in her. She stops showing up for her relationships. She becomes easily irritated, disconnected. She starts working through pain instead of healing it first. This reflects what psychologists call compassion fatigue, a form of secondary traumatic stress experienced by people who are chronically exposed to others' suffering and feel unable to detach or recover. In the later seasons, we see this when Malika is constantly overwhelmed by work at DPN and begins lashing out at coworkers and friends who question her. Even when Isaac tries to reach her, she doesn't have the capacity to hold emotional space for their connection. She is so focused on the big cause that she is being an activist for that she completely overlooks the little causes that are in her personal relationships and her neighbors that live right next door. This is the hallmark of activism fatigue, when the burden of change becomes so overwhelming that it turns purpose into pressure. When someone continuously prioritizes the needs of others over their own well-being and without internal replenishment, it is emotional labor overload. Malika isn't lacking compassion, she is actually drowning in it without any self-compassion left to anchor her. She is the poster child of the saying, you need to fill your own cup before you fill others. Trying to stand by what you believe are noble causes isn't always healthy, especially if you forget yourself. In today's culture, we romanticize sacrifice the same way that we glamorize overwork. Being exhausted for a cause is framed as bravery. Losing yourself is framed as commitment. But in reality, it's just another form of self-abandonment. And in clinical terms, self-abandonment often involves ignoring one's own emotional and physical needs in order to maintain attachment, approval, or control. A pattern frequently rooted in early caregiving dynamics. And this checks out for Malika because we have to remember she was homeless and abandoned by her own parents. And Malika gives up her free time, her romantic life, her mental clarity. She even forgets what brings her joy. When she starts taking on higher stake responsibilities at DPN while ignoring her emotional needs in her polyamorous relationships, we see that clearly. She prioritizes group success and optics over genuine connection, even with Angelica, her girlfriend. The moment that makes this painfully clear is when Angelica decides to end their relationship, not out of jealousy or cruelty, but because she felt emotionally alone and abandoned in the relationship. Angelica needed presence, and Malika, although well-intentioned and with a good heart, had nothing left to give. And that's the cost. Burnout doesn't just take your energy, it takes your relationships, your softness, and your ability to feel fully alive. And in the middle of all her activism, she becomes entrapped. Her activism stops being a choice, it becomes her identity, a role that she has to perform even when she's clearly unraveling. This is role engulfment, when a person's identity becomes entirely consumed by a single role, often to the detriment of their psychological flexibility. And it's also associated with identity diffusion, where the pressure to be someone overwhelms one's ability to form a stable, integrated self. You stop being someone who cares, you become the cause, and only the cause. And without it, you don't know who you are anymore. Malika actually expresses this fear herself in the latter seasons when she questions whether she's making a difference at all. Her crisis doesn't come from the issues she's fighting for, it comes from the weight of defining her entire worth through a social justice movement. It is why she loses direction, why she can't pause, because stepping back doesn't feel like rest, it feels like failure. And the tragedy of Malika's arc is that deep down, she means well. Like many activists, deep down, they mean well. They just get lost in the cause. And meaning well doesn't mean anything because it often is not enough, especially to live a fulfilled life. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot build sustainable change by abandoning your own emotional needs and your rationality, and you cannot replace self-worth with sacrifice. This self-abandonment to the point where one abandons one's need to heal from their own troubles is really functional freeze, because functional freeze happens when someone overfunctions through productivity to avoid confronting their internal pain or unmet emotional needs. What we can learn from this is that activism without boundaries becomes self-harm disguised as virtue, and eventually it costs everything it was meant to protect, your connection to humanity, including your own. It's all about the burnout that we often don't talk about. Not the burnout from overwork at your job or overtraining at your gym, but from overcare, from trying to be enough for everyone while slowly losing yourself. So if you're someone who is always showing up, always fighting, always carrying the emotional weight of the world, let this be your reminder that you matter even when you're resting, even when you're taking a step back, and you don't have to lose yourself to do good in the world. Thank you for watching this video. I would love to know your thoughts. And let me know in the comments, have you ever made your purpose your entire identity until you lost yourself? And if you have healed already, what did it take to bring you back to yourself? Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.